Okay, so we're going to take you through a demonstration then of the tool, kind of high level, and try and tip through a lot of the things that we touched on theoretically today. But again, as most of you might be customers, I'm sure this view is very similar to you. This is Salesforce and a salesperson's view typically of Salesforce out of the box, which is more around our accounts, contacts, leads, etc. Pardot, again, it is on the same platform. So if you become a Pardot customer, it's just from our app launcher here up on the right hand side. So it is the same platform, and all you're doing is switching to that Pardot UI and view to open up those Pardot features. So we'll jump in here now to our Pardot home screen. And the first kind of thing to take you through for me as a marketer, again, you can configure like you can at Salesforce home screen to display anything you want. But for me as maybe a marketing leader or a business leader, really want to dive in on my day-to-day, every day, understand how are we performing as an organization, how are we contributing to those metrics that are important to us. And so what we have here just on my home screen, I've set up some of those really rich dashboards that we can power out of the box by connecting our sales data to that marketing data that we have here. And what we're able to do is filter this down to look at different date ranges, but also Pardot gives you the ability to start tagging your assets or tagging your content so that we can start to maybe understand at a more high level how specific categories of campaigns are actually performing when it comes to pipeline in this instance. And what we get here right up the top is understanding that life cycle snapshot. So seeing the individuals that we're engaging with at those different stages of the funnel. So everything from anonymous visitors that come onto our site up until the point they raise their hand, and we define them as a prospect then in Pardot. So, raising their hand being that they've submitted their contact information to you through a form or a landing page, all the way through to what we determine to be an MQL, so marketing qualified lead. Maybe there's some of that scoring and grading you want to do, and there's certain thresholds that you put in place that determine how warm or qualified this is, well qualified this is from a marketing point of view. And at that point, we hand it across to sales. We create a stage one opportunity in Salesforce. And this is where a siloed system, for me, it tends to drop off, right? This is where a lot of our customers come to us and they're saying, they're using a different marketing solution. They have Salesforce CRM, and this is where they struggle, is to continue to track the user through that sales cycle as well. But we have the ability to do that here and part of understand our sales qualified leads, what opportunities have marketing created from a pipeline perspective, and ultimately how many of them are actually translating to revenue for us as a business. This, again, from a leader's point of view, I'm starting to get an idea of what my conversion rates are looking like at these different stages of the funnel. But I also have a timeline down here. So how long is it taking us on average to move these deals from top of the funnel all the way through to close business? So if we think about future planning, we want, to grow revenue by X next FY. How are we going to kind of reverse engineer this? We understand, well, how many deals do we need to close to hit that target? Because we have an average deal value maybe. And then start to work back and see, well, how far out do we need to invest to actually drive that pipeline for the business to achieve that revenue target. So really great information for marketing leaders or sales leaders, our C-suite to really get involved in. And then we can go down into a more informed view. So understanding ultimately what campaigns are actually driving that revenue for us. So we can start to be more specific about where we want to invest that marketing budget to help and fill that funnel at the top of the funnel. That's ultimately going to help us drive those outcomes, get a better picture of our overall return on investment from these marketing activities that in terms of how they're driving that pipeline as well. We can then switch, and I know Denny just touched on it, but we think about that attribution piece, okay? So again, we can apply different filters onto this dashboard and look at different influence models. So what we're seeing out of the box here is our even distribution. Okay, so this is showing me out of all of the campaigns, it's evenly distributing the revenue that we get from any deals that we win to the campaigns that had an impact on that deal. So say, for instance, we go and we close a 50K deal today. There are 5 campaigns that, were related to that opportunity over time, everything from where that opportunity was initially sourced from up until maybe an event a customer went on, before the deal closed. We can then attribute 10K to each of those 5 different campaigns that had an impact on that opportunity. But we can also drill in and start to look at different modeling, right? So we can look at a first touch model. So again, if we think about how do we fill the top of the funnel with more leads, we can start to understand what campaigns are the best at helping us drive revenue for the business from a first touch perspective. So these are the campaigns that help us source the best quality leads right at the top of the funnel, because ultimately they go through to revenue. But then we can also look at the last touch funnel. So what campaigns are having the greatest impact on us actually going and converting those opportunities that are in later stages, right? So again, when we start to think about how do we use this data, so how does a marketer start to segment down, we can start to understand if we've got our sales data connected to marketing, what stage of an opportunity potentially some customers are in at a particular point in time. Let's put them and segment them down into a specific audience, and let's target them with some of these campaigns that we know are best to help us actually go and close revenue. So in this case, it might be an event. So let's make sure, later stages of a deal, that we're getting our customers along to some events which are really helping us ultimately go and win those. We can then also look at some more marketing focus metrics. So we understand that marketing is contributing to revenue and to pipeline and to the health of the business from a sales perspective. But how are my marketing assets actually performing, okay, as a marketer? So we can start to see, and again, filter down based on different campaigns and tags and date ranges, but start to see the overall health of those marketing assets. So how are my emails performing in terms of clicks, click-throughs, opens, bounces? How are my forms performing? How are my landing pages performing in terms of submissions and submission rates and stuff as well? So again, starting to understand the assets that are working best, optimize and iterate so that we can continue to have success in any kind of future campaigns that we plan. And finally, we also think about that ABM, so the account-based marketing. So again, getting a view at an account level, what are the key accounts that we can identify where we're driving the most pipeline or having the most success, or understanding the account engagement score as an overall. So rolling up all of the contacts in that account to paint an overall picture of a score of a specific account, to understand how engaged that account is, help us identify these are the key accounts that are showing the most promise, and really helping us drill into more of that account view and understanding our sales events and activities and revenue win percentages with these top accounts as well. So now that we kind of have that analytical view of how marketing is performing and that great data that we're able to dive into when we have sales and marketing connected, we start to think again about the day-to-day of a marketer. So how do they start to segment and target these individuals? And when an individual comes into the marketing solution side of Salesforce, they come in initially as a prospect. So we'll see our kind of full list of prospects that will be listed here. And then we start to paint a picture just at a high level on this list view of what their overall score and their grade is. But if we dive into Ron here, for instance, and into his profile, we then start to paint a picture of how we're beginning to enrich his profile with more of that tracking data that we're collecting as Ron engages with us over time. So we can start to see some insights that are being surfaced here. So we're getting a picture of his score. And what a score is in Salesforce Marketing Solution is how interested is Ron in us as a business based on all of his engagement that is taking place, right? So these activities that you see here, anytime he engages, visits a page, downloads a white paper, fills out a contact form, whatever that might be, we're attributing a score to that particular activity, and that's painting a picture and building up his overall score. What we're also able to do is split those scores into specific categories. Okay, so this again, if we start to think about an account-based marketing view, helping us understand what specific products or categories of services our prospects or our accounts are more interested in versus others. So again, we can be more targeted in the types of messaging that we actually deliver out. And importantly as well, we also see a grade here. So this grade is driven by not how interested is Ron in us, but how interested should we be in Ron. Okay, so what we're using here from a data points perspective is he the right job title from the right industry? So helping us determine what makes up a good looking customer that could be a decision maker that we actually want to speak to, and maybe not somebody who's looking for a career searching on your job site, job section of your website, for instance. So with that information, what we want to do is go ahead and we want to use that information, combine it with as much data as we can to really target our individuals, put them onto different lists to run these different kind of automations and campaigns from. So we start to think about that segmentation capability. And we've got lists that are both, static and dynamic. So a dynamic list being, some logic, business logic that we create in the background with some rules. and customers, once they meet the criteria for that list, they're either added to or removed from those lists. So quite dynamic and chopping and changing. And to build those rules, very simple for us to do. So if we come into our segmentation rules, this is where I start to really tap into that treasure trove of data that we've got sitting in the CRM, and being able to combine that with some of the more top of the funnel tracking data that our marketing tool here is actually collecting on our prospects as well. So we can build our logic off a customer or prospect must match all of the rules that we set, and we can set multiple different rules, or we could build the logic off must match at least one of those rules, right? Matching and or base logic. If we want to create that rule, we then just choose what data do we want to work with first off. Okay, so we might say, well, firstly, I want to work with some account-based information that sits in our CRM, right? So we say that the prospects account, the industry is actually equal to high tech, for instance. Okay, so this means we've got a specific offering for the high tech, specific messaging that we're planning on delivering. We then say, well, we also want to make sure that this is maybe a nurture campaign where we really want to drive good quality leads to our salespeople to go and pick up the phones and advance some pipeline on. So we'll say, well, we want to give them those good quality leads. So let's start using some of that marketing tracking information and combine it with that CRM information and say, well, let's target anybody who has a score that is greater than 250. So maybe we've set our threshold for when we want to pass someone to sales at about 300. So we just have a small bit to go to actually advance these prospects up to a point that it's the right time for our salespeople to speak out, to pick up the phone. And then we say, well, again, we don't want to give them bad leads. So we might say, well, let's make sure that they're of the right grade. So let's not target anybody who's worse or less than an A-. Okay, so now very quickly, I've built out some logic to get a really targeted specific list, and I just determine what do I want to do with that. So do we want to add them to a specific campaign, add them to a specific list, or maybe more importantly, remove them from a list as well, because we don't want to communicate with these people, or we want to suppress them from certain types of communication as well. So multiple different actions that we can do to help us segment down our prospect database. Okay. And then we think about the automation side of that. So how do we actually go and build out these rich experiences? And with that, we can run multiple different kind of nurture paths and engagements across these different channels and touch points, and do different types of cadences. So you might think about our more classic marketing examples of nurture paths where, we're trying to build pipeline, or we're just talking there about, a new product launch potentially, or staying top of mind. But I also have customers specifically in the high-tech industry are using this because, we're going more towards a SaaS-based model more and more in the kind of technology industry space. So we start to think about post-sale, SaaS, it's all about annual recurring revenue. Are there renewal journeys that we should be thinking about setting up as customers as well? And we can start to understand and push our customers through these different points. So at this point, we start a journey with an individual. We then evaluate the data at this point. We understand, is this person what we're asking here? Are they less or equal to a B grade? If yes, let's push them down a different path. If no, they go down a separate path. Then we might send an email, listen out for has something happened, email click yes or no. If yes, let's adjust their score upwards, give them more points. So we can really start to automate and then help us enrich our prospects up to the point that we can effectively kind of push them across the sales to really help the business. But thinking about it for broader use cases as well, things like onboarding, things like renewals are great use cases our customers have. And then finally is that stitching together. So how can we help salespeople execute and perform their role? And then we think, so the first part when I talked about this was me as a salesperson getting alerted when somebody actually engages with a marketing asset or a piece of content. So have they downloaded a file? Have they completed a form? Have they clicked a link? And we can set up what we want to listen out for as salespeople in these different columns. And anytime this happens, I can get a notification to the Salesforce app on my phone. A notification might appear in the top of my screen here in the desktop, or get an email direct to my inbox as well to say, in this instance, Leigh Andrew from Pacific Gas and Electric has actually gone and filled out this form. So for me, straight away alert, I can now pick up the phone to Leigh. So then we think about swapping back into the salesperson's view. Okay, and we'll switch back into our classic CRM view here. And let's take Leigh as that example. And when I land on Lay's record, this is where, again, I'm starting to get surface some of those insights that our marketing solution is collecting to help me really understand Lay and have more relevant conversations with him. So I can see some of that, scoring information, grade information here on his record. But also what I can see here is a track of all of that engagement history in chronological order of what assets has he been engaged in. So we can start to paint a picture of how do we want to have this conversation with Lay. I'm on the phone to Lay. We have a good call. There is a project coming up. We actually have an event that's really relevant for him. So I don't want to just go and tell marketing, look, can you put Lay on that track? What I can do as a salesperson is actually push Lay straight back into our marketing funnels if there is something, a program in place for that particular event. So really useful for me, again, as a salesperson, to push them back into the marketing tool, to put them in those nurture paths, or even just directly send Lay a pre-built marketing email template. So there might already be an event invitation there, and marketing can expose these to the salespeople, where we go ahead and we send that to Lay, and it's going to come from me as the salesperson. And I have the ability to edit some boxes if marketing allow me as well. The other view then, the final view that we'll talk through, is that account view. Okay, so how do we power those account-based marketing insights? So again, when we think about the engagement that an account is having, so a roll-up of all those contacts, we can switch to this really rich dashboard view, and again, filter down by different date ranges, but paint a very quick picture of, again, what campaigns is this account as a whole most engaged with? What's that engagement look like over time? We can see a recent spike. So I'm saying, well, to me, this account is showing a lot of recent intent. Now is the right time to pick up the phone and speak to them. Who are the most engaged people in that account? Do I have a relationship with Bob? To Denny's point earlier, if I don't, he could be the champion, right? So I want to pick up the phone to Bob and really spark up a conversation, understand what's important, why are they interested at this point in time, and understanding each of those assets that they've actually gone ahead and engaged with, so that we can have those relevant conversations and more pointed from a salesperson's perspective as well.